Hi, very nice to see everybody here. So my name is Danielle said is Tracy Baxter. I was one of the founding partners at Alytics, and we recently got acquired by Accenture last May, and I'm now an associate director for Accenture, and I'm responsible for the OMERS account. I've been working with OMERS for the last three and a half years. So, Kristen, just to get us started, if you could all three of you introduce yourself and what your role has been in the Anaplan journey at OMERS.
No problem. Good to see everybody. Hopefully everyone got some snacks that are laced with caffeine. I noticed that they do that here, so if you may have had a granola bar, it probably had caffeine in it. Hopefully everyone's ready for the next session after lunch. So I'm Kristen Cornell. I'm the Director of Financial Systems. I've been with OMERS for about 4 years. For those of you that don't know, OMERS is the pension plan for the municipal employees of the province of Ontario. So we have 640,000 members. Those look like transportation workers, librarians, police, fire, folks that work in schools who aren't teachers. So, all across the community, people that you interact with every day. So we're really proud to be serving those pensioners. I sit on the corporate finance team and I manage our finance technology platform. So I manage Anaplan and our ERP system, our expense and travel system as well. And kind of been here since the beginning with Anaplan along with my colleagues, and happy to be chatting with you today about our journey.
Okay, thanks, Kristen. My name is Vivian. I am also in the corporate finance team, but on the FP&A side, primarily I support the corporate head office functions in my day-to-day. I've been here 5 years, so was part of the initial implementation Anaplan. So it's been a great journey so far. I'm excited to see where we're going.
Hi, everyone. Great to be here. Henry, Senior Manager, FP&A. I've also been with OMERS coming up on 5 years now, and since I've been at OMERS, I spent a few years also in corporate finance, supporting corporate FP&A, and over the last few years, I've had a great opportunity to kind of start up a new FP&A team, specifically supporting our capital markets business, so our public market investment teams, kind of doing full P&L FP&A there. I've been very involved with the Anaplan project as well.
Okay, thank you all. So I think, Kristen, this one's for you. So the Alytics Accenture OMERS partnership started about 3 years ago. From my perspective, I think my team's perspective, it's been an absolutely fantastic, great partnership. Can you walk us through sort of the relationship, how the relationship began with OMERS and what the initial goals were of us engaging with your team?
Yeah, for sure. Maybe I'll just take a step back and share what we use Anaplan for, because we can do many things with it. So we started with general and administrative expenses and headcount planning. So it's a platform that we put in across the entire enterprise, and we went live in July 2022. And after that, we knew that we needed support for the platform. Anaplan's a pretty bespoke skill set, and we were all new to the tool, so we wanted to bring in a partner that could help us upskill, that could help us really stabilize the platform as well, because I'd say Anaplan has evolved even since we put it in. It was a toolkit, and it still is, but there was much less pre-built material, so there was a lot of finessing, I would say, through the models that we were doing, we've been doing. So I don't even know where we met, to be honest. I think Anaplan introduced us. Yeah, I think Anaplan said, hey, you should ask Alytics to respond to the RFP, and met the team, really liked the size of the firm, and then also the focus on Anaplan and the expertise in that area. So that was how we started working together.
Yep.
Yeah.
So next question then, I think unfortunately this is for you probably as well, is where you started with Anaplan, how has Anaplan evolved over the last 3 years? I mean, you've been involved in all of it, but from your perspective.
Definitely. So like I said, in the beginning, we were very focused on stabilizing and just getting that first operating plan done in the platform. So I think it was a bit of a hairy time, like the first year, because we went live very close, right? to the operating plan process. So as we were moving through and running different processes, we were just trying to do the basics. We took an MVP approach, so we felt like we'd kept it simple, but I think we'd still bit off a fair bit. So over the last few years, and I actually would love Vivian and Henry to weigh in on this too, we've been I'd say cleaning up our models, optimizing, always trying to manage the data a little bit that we have in there too, the size of the model. And now we're at a place where the broader team that uses Anaplan is, I think, much more comfortable, and then even also has a greater sense of ownership for the platform, which has been amazing. Like, I think honestly in the early days, I came in, Anaplan was my first program. Like, I was driving a lot of it, and now the finance team is really driving much, much more engagement with you and your team, the work that they're doing, the road mapping, what they want to see in the platform. So this year, we're going to talk about the long-range plan.
Yep.
That was something that the team did last year. That was probably the first, I would say, like, new use case that we put in. And do you want me to talk about what's coming up, or are we going to save that?
Well, I mean, I don't know if Vivian, for you and Henry is sort of, so the LRP project, Long Range Planning Project, was a big initiative for OMERS when we first got engaged. So what value is that delivering to OMERS?
Yes, so if we backtrack a little bit, like Kristen said, before Anaplan, we were on Hyperion and SmartView, so a lot of our work was very like Excel based. So with Anaplan, we sort of had to like pivot the way that we approach things, relook at our processes, so that we can better use Anaplan's strengths as opposed to just like lift and shift what we were doing previously. And so a lot of what we were doing after we implemented in 2022 was sort of relooking at what we had established. Is there anything that we can improve on to just streamline the processes before we started thinking about building additional modules? So then, like Kristen said, the LRP module, which is long-range planning, that was sort of our first additional module outside of our main, like our core workforce planning, G&A planning modules that we added. And really the drive came from, as with a lot of things, from our C-suite. So we always have a 5-year strategy plan. The latest one takes us 2025 to 2030. And then along with that, we also wanted to see, with all these great things that OMERS is planning to do in the next 5 years and achieve, what would it take to bring us there? And so previously, and probably unsurprisingly, a lot of this work was being done in our good friend Excel. And with Excel, we always had this issue where it's in various people's desktops, floating around in places, maybe not the most up to date. So there's really that push to centralize everything so that everyone's just looking at the latest version and you're not looking at SharePoint or your email for like version 36 of the 5-year plan. And so I think that was a big push to sort of centralize and consolidate that 5-year planning forecast process so that it's not just sitting in silos across the organization, but more so that we have like a combined approach to that. And the second piece was, as the overall business environment gets more complex, things can change very quickly. And so previously with Excel, what we were doing was very sort of, it wasn't very flexible. We would really only do it once a year. And then during the year, if anything really changed, you'd kind of have to scramble and go back to your assumptions page and try to add them in without breaking the rest of the model. But with building this model in Anaplan, the goal was really to give us that flexibility to be able to do scenario analysis and say, okay, version 1, let's say the returns assumptions have changed this way, what would our expenses look like? Version 2, let's say not as optimistic, if that's how it goes, what would we look like 5 years down the road? And so Anaplan, building this module in Anaplan has really enabled us to have that flexibility and be able to respond to our C-suite leaders' ad hoc requests in a more timely fashion and also with a bit more accuracy than what we had seen in Excel previously.
Maybe I'll just add something just to echo there. We just talked about we built this LRP, long-range planning model, on top after we kind of right-sized what we were currently doing. And I think that's really important to say. We didn't just keep adding stuff on top of our system. We really took a fresh look to make sure everything was working the way we wanted to. And then we're very intentional about, okay, what's the priority? Long-range planning was a big priority, so then that's what we decided to tackle next. And then, the other point I just want to kind of highlight too, Vivian touched on it, the enterprise being able to consolidate everything, the way OMERS is set up, and I'm sure a lot of your businesses maybe as well. There could be different business units, different finance teams. Everyone looks at things a little bit differently. So we really wanted to be intentional when we created this module, that we all came together, created something that was quite flexible but also not too rigid, so that we can still consolidate up at the top of the house.
Perfect. Thank you very much. So every sort of major implementation you do or project that you do, there's you face hurdles. So I'd love to, I think the audience and I would love to know what some of the hurdles were that you encountered. How did you overcome them? How did you move forward?
You want to talk about the Anaplan platform or the LRP in particular?
Anaplan.
Okay. Are there LRP hurdles too that you guys want to talk about later? All right. Okay. Sounds good. So I think I mentioned this, that Anaplan was a new platform for us as an organization, and there isn't a large skill set in the workforce for Anaplan, I think broadly, but maybe even less in Canada than in the US. So we were like babes in the woods after we went live. We were pretty helpless. We couldn't do much. We were really reliant on our partners. And so we were really just focused on kind of the day-to-day, like keeping the lights on, keeping the system up and running, like what file didn't go through today or whatever. We have Veronica here from our organization too. She's our system administrator, and she's become incredible and learned so much over the years of partnering again with your team as well. So that's been great to see. I think some of the hurdles and the risks with Anaplan is that it is a toolkit, so you can do anything. And there's a lot, I haven't heard it as much this year, but other years I've heard this theme of just because you can doesn't mean you should, right? So like, is Anaplan the right tool for XYZ? And we haven't really been in that position so far too much because we're just starting to build out new use cases now, but I think that's something we'll have to continue to ask ourselves. What's the right tool or platform to be doing a certain type of analysis? But just ramping up on the platform and then coordinating, like Henry said, just across the different teams. Because we started out, like I said, at an enterprise level with OMERS, and then Oxford is our real estate division, but it's very much an entity in its own right and in a very unique business compared to the investment side. So we ended up splitting off at a certain point for some things, and we were trying to keep it together. So I think in Anaplan too, trying to make decisions around what level of granularity do you want to have with your models, like what's the right breakdown, and then just also coordinating with in the COE session this morning, there was a good conversation around different like regional requirements or business unit requirements. So just how do we manage the platform as it grows within OMERS, as it becomes more well-known, as people want to take business case or use cases into the tool? How do we approach it in a way so that we're not duplicating the same use case with a slight variation? And how do we kind of accommodate the needs of the business at the same time?
Yeah, I think specifically for LRP, like Kristen's alluded to before as well, just because we have all these different businesses that are working together, you sort of have to juggle, the different needs. And so I think one of the key lessons we learned in our initial Anaplan implementation was that it was very, very important to spend the adequate amount of time in planning and setting up the module before you actually dive into setting it up. And part of that also involves taking a step back and looking at current day processes. This is actually makes sense to translate into Anaplan, because what we found was, across the different investment businesses, everyone had roughly the same approach, but then they had sort of their different, like small changes in their details that made it a bit difficult to sort of get to a consensus. So that was very important to bring up in the planning stage and sort of hash that out so everybody is aligned in the same starting point before we actually went ahead to build something, rather than rushing into the build stage and then retroactively saying, hey, this doesn't really work, we need to go back, or have all these complicated workarounds. So that was something we were trying to avoid.
I'll just add hurdles specifically to the LRP implementation. Really, a lot of it was just getting all the teams aligned in terms of what are the key processes we want to build into it. I think, with the help of Analytics, like it was very easy, I think, to actually get the model built in the end. A lot of the work went into, the process design. So I'll kind of give an example. We have a lot of different, line item accounts. If you want to budget travel, consulting, people costs, there's all these different drivers that you could put into it. We had to make a decision on how granular did we want to go into. Do we want to apply inflation to everything? Do we want specific assumptions for different lines? Another example I'll give is for a long-range planning for people costs. We did have some assumptions from different leadership around adding headcount at different levels, but across the business, a senior level person may cost a different amount depending on where in the business they were. So we did find sort of a middle ground that made it more simple versus having 10, 20 different levels that you pick from just to add a headcount. And then you kind of decide where you want to apply the inflation assumptions. And I think the other big one for us too was trying to figure out a way to integrate technology spend. So, like many companies, you might have some large technology projects where you're capitalizing costs and you're going to have amortization down the line. That we felt was, important enough that we wanted to make sure that was captured. So I think once we kind of got to that point, I do feel like the process was quite smooth and actually getting everything up and running.
Yep. I think one of the interesting points as well is you've got OMERS and then you've got Oxford. I think it would be interesting because they're on their own Anaplan journey, the Oxford team are, you're on your Anaplan journey, and sort of where's the cross between both organizations? I mean, we work with both teams, but from your perspective, the crossover.
I can start and then you can jump in. Yeah, I think it was important to both parts of the organization that we work with the same partner. I think we saw a lot of value in that, so we were happy that we could agree on the same partner. We went the same direction because I think we do rely on your team to kind of share things back and forth and say, okay, well, this is what so there's a bit of coordination there that your team manages
We do, yep.
that way. And I think also as we've matured, we haven't really managed, I think, to stood up like a center of excellence the way that I would have wanted to 3 years ago. I was like, do the center of excellence. It just has taken so much time. But I think we're getting there organically, which is actually really cool. So now Oxford and OMERS, we're coming together more to have these conversations. So some of the new use cases are actually joint use cases.
Yes.
And we have complexity because we have our own instances. But we're still trying to figure out how we can work together on it. So,
Good.
yeah. Anything you guys want to add about Oxford?
That covers everything.
Covers everything. Okay, so the next endeavors, what is on the roadmap for OMERS? I know that we're working in the background right now on what we think you could be doing with the platform. There's 2 initiatives that we're talking about right now. Do you want to talk a little bit more about those?
Yeah,
So
sure.
that's the corporate allocations and the HR incentive model.
I can do corporate. Yep. So the next sort of module that we want to stand up is the corporate allocation. So this is essentially our transfer pricing between the corporate head office to the different various investment groups. And so previously, again, we took the same approach. We looked at what our current processes were, where we can streamline that before moving it into Anaplan. So that was all done last year. We revamped our allocation process to make it simpler and more efficient, less complex. And so this year it's really just moving all of the pieces there into Anaplan so that we can collect all the inputs and then disseminate it to the various investment businesses through Anaplan, so we're not just sending people the latest in an email. So hopefully this will really help save time and smooth out the communication process.
I can touch on the other initiatives. So this is getting our incentives or bonus comp model into Anaplan. Currently to date and for the last few years, it's definitely been an area that we wanted to look at. It's a very manual, it's a huge Excel model that HR maintains. I think we've come a long way. A lot of the information does come from our HR information system, but where finance really needs the ability to do is being able to do like different scenario analysis, variance analysis. I'm sure a lot of people have different comp plans. So for us, things like investment returns, divisional scorecards, a lot of different assumptions go into these forecasts, and we haven't really had a great way to kind of model out different scenarios and just turn one thing on, turn another thing off. So hopefully this gives us the opportunity to do that, and in a way that's probably a bit more robust, some better controls as well, so that we're not juggling 2, 3, 4 different files at a time when we're trying to do some, ad hoc analysis.
Okay, so we've got these 2 additional use cases that we're looking at implementing over the next quarter, I think. And then what, from your perspective, and I know that we're sort of working on this in the background, but where do you feel from an OMERS perspective that you could take Anaplan for the future? That's the first question. And the second one is, what are sort of some of the takeaways you've sort of gathered over the last 4 years with your Anaplan implementations that if you could do it all again, you wouldn't repeat?
I feel like that's a very separate question from the first one. Maybe we can come back to that second question. So the first question was, where do we see us going?
Us going with Anaplan in the future.
Okay, right. So I think this year was really cool because HR said they were sort of pushing for getting the model into Anaplan, right? So this has primarily been a finance use tool before. And we've talked to some of the other investment businesses about doing scenario modeling, and they've been a little bit back and forth. But I think as Anaplan becomes more established and mature, that those use cases will continue to come out. And anywhere we've got a big old Excel file that takes forever to run and breaks, there's an opportunity to pull some of that into the platform. So I think we'll still continue to build it out, from a pure planning standpoint. And I know, for me, I would love us to think about how we get the users in the system, right? Because today we still give our business partners a very white glove service around the FP&A process and getting inputs from them. But, I like to hear about other organizations like Fidelity this morning. I think a lot more business users in the application. So thinking about how we could do that to really leverage the power of the platform from an efficiency standpoint. Yeah. What about you guys?
Yeah, I think those are really great points. And part of it is as we build out more modules, there's more that we can showcase to our user base to say, hey, look at all this great stuff we have in Anaplan. Look at how flexible it is and how it can give you all that information instantaneously. And that is, I find, a very good sort of case to get more people into the system rather than sort of talk to them through decks.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Mm-hmm. One of the other things we're looking at too, just some of the new, I don't know if even that new, but some of the products from Anaplan that we don't have, like Excel. So from a reporting standpoint, not the other Excel. I don't know why they picked that name, but so we're looking at that. Like when we got in, the reporting was pretty immature, I would say, in the Anaplan tool, and we didn't feel like it was really executive ready. But now it's looking much different, right? So we're going to check that out. And there's a lot of interest broadly at OMERS just in terms of adopting AI and figuring out how we incorporate that. So looking at what makes sense for us based on how we use Anaplan, we'll kind of think about that too.
Yeah.
Yep. Okay, and then my second question that you
Yes.
didn't want to go into.
Which was lessons learned, or what would we do differently?
Yeah, lessons learned.
Vivian, you talked about the importance of planning the model at the beginning. And so I think just understanding that SA role, the solution architect role, and the importance of that foundational piece. Because I'd say generally Anaplan is implemented in an agile way, but then I feel like you need like more control sometimes, because it's easy to just let things can get a little bit adrift. And I don't know that OMERS is the best at agile. Like we haven't adopted that as maybe broadly as some of other organizations, but getting that architecture down, breaking the models into smaller enough pieces so that you've got the flexibility there. I think that's the learning for us, because we've gone back and updated a lot of our models, right? I think also finding the right partner is really important. So because of that skill set, I don't want to call it a shortage, but for Anaplan, a lot of the partners have, I'd say, like more of a North American staffing model. So for us, even though most of your team, all your team is based in the US, making sure that your team comes on site with us, because the first year, I don't think we got everything done we wanted to, because it was just dragging, right? We couldn't get it done. So then the second year we said,
Came on site.
you got to come, we're going to do this, we're going to get in a room, and that's worked incredibly well, because to your point, once everyone got together in the room and planned it out, then the model build actually went quite smoothly.
Oh, I was just going to echo that point, like 100%, when, we all got together and just, we were whiteboarding stuff and just writing out the whole flow and, I want to add something here. Oh, we actually don't need this. Just that part just came together incredibly.
I think one other big takeaway I had from this is, like Kristen said, just because you can doesn't mean you should. And the thing with Anaplan is because it's so flexible, you can do anything you want in it. You have to be, make a conscious decision around how you're building the model. And for us, I think initially, when we started on our journey, we were very excited about this flexibility. And so we put in all these functions for exception cases that we thought maybe we might need in like the next 5 years. And then what that resulted in was a model that was very complex in the sense that if something broke during the planning phase or we implemented like a new function, the chances of something else breaking in the model was very, very high, and then it would take a very long time to sort of try to figure out what was happening there. So really here it's being intentional in striking a balance between building a flexible enough model for your business cases and the complexity of that model. So I think what we found worked really well in like our long range planning module. And in this instance, we haven't felt the need to go back, was that we sort of landed at like a middle level where we had enough sort of granularity, but not too much detail, that we could still get to a good enough number, be able to reflect the different circumstances that affect each investment business without, building overly complicated functions that require like 10 different assumptions. We literally just picked like, what are your top 3 cost drivers impacting your businesses, and sort of looked at where that overlapped across the different investment teams, and those were the ones that we put into our long-range planning model. And I think so far it's worked out pretty well. The model's not so complex that, if something happens or we want to update a function, it causes everything else to sort of fall apart. So I think that was one of the biggest takeaways for me, at least, coming from our initial implementation.
I don't actually have any other questions, would you believe?
Well,
Unless there's something
that
else
I was
that you would...
chatting with someone about at lunch was just maybe a bit of a lessons learned, just because everything is built from the ground up, just documentation around the models and plans can be kind of complicated, and it's easy to overlook that, especially if you're in your implementation, you've got your partner and maybe they're using an offshore team, and so you show up and something's been built and you have no idea how it was done or how it all fits together, how the data flows through the models. And that's where I think we've had some challenges where you make a change, it breaks something, you didn't know that those 2 things were linked. I'm sorry if this sounds bad. I'm just telling you. I'm just telling you what we've experienced. So just understanding that lineage really, really well, and figuring out how do you document it, because there isn't really a standard process for that. And we talked about it a ton on our implementation. And at the end of the day, when we went live, we didn't have it. So it was something that we've kind of built up over time. But I don't know, Henry, you look like you want to say something.
Yeah, I'll add something there just on documentation. I think something that our team found very worthwhile was actually going back with kind of fresh eyes every once in a while and looking at all the pages and models that we built, and looking at it from a UI perspective. Do we like the way things are set up? Do we like the way the formatting is? Do we have enough documentation on the page that explains, step by step, all the different processes and what you're supposed to do here? So I think having done that and applying the same, logic and the same process when we built our new models has helped a lot. And now everything has sort of the same look and feel. You kind of know where to go to input your inputs. You kind of know where to go for your drop downs, and just things like that. I think was very worthwhile.
Yeah, I think we had a lot of inconsistency actually in the way that the models looked at the end of the day, because on the project you had different teams working on different models, and then they maybe made a decision about a header or a color or an instruction. And I think a lot of the cleanup we've done has been streamlining the look and feel, so consistent design principles from a UI perspective is important. Maybe doesn't get talked about a lot. Yeah.
Oh, well, thank you all very much.
Well, thank you to Accenture and OMERS. Please join me in a huge round of applause. We appreciate you sharing.